They're queuing for places at university, but is it worth it? Do you want fries with that? Tonight, thousands of so far unsuccessful applicants are desperately scrabbling for the remaining few university places, and when the music stops, many of them will be no further forward. But is it worth all their angst and heartache? Are some degrees all they're cracked up to be? I'll be asking the Universities Minister, David Willetts.
Please repeat after me.
Also tonight, Naomi Campbell was a one-day wonder at The Hague. But will Charles Taylor's senior defence counsel, rough, tough and silken-tongued, be the enduring star? I'll be speaking to Courtney Griffiths, QC. In South Bristol live some of what David Cameron called the poorest and most vulnerable in society. Over the next year, we'll be seeing how they cope with austerity.
£20 a week to them is like pennies. Yeah. But to us, that's a lot of money. Yeah, exactly.
And three big Labour figures, the latest of whom is Alan Milburn, are pitching for the coalition team. John Prescott's here to whisper some kindly advice. Good evening. If you have set your sights on university, this summer is either a time of joy, uncertainty or despair, depending whether your place is assured, conditional on grades, or else you're pinning your hopes on clearing. The Scottish results came out in July, and on Thursday, pupils sitting A-levels in the United Kingdom will hear the best and worst. But with ever more students chasing places and certainly far fewer in clearing, is it all worth it? New figures suggest the average loan burden over a degree started this autumn will work out at almost £25,000, and the country is awash with graduates chasing whatever jobs they can get. In a moment, I'll be speaking to the Universities Minister, David Willetts, but first, here's Sophie Hutchinson.
The sense of privilege, of effortless superiority, is contagious at Oxford.
Back in the old days, getting into university was a bit niche, for a lucky few at top schools with top grades. Today, finding a place at university is more like this. Like trying to get your hands on the latest cutting-edge technology. The government's warning that record numbers of students can expect to be turned away, with competition for university places fiercer than ever.
It's very tricky. I think it's very up in the air and uncertain. No one really knows whether they'll be able to get a job at the end of their degree, whether they're even going to get into uni by the grades that they've got. So especially if you're at at A-levels now and you're working very hard trying to get those grades, and then even if you've got those grades you can't get into uni, it is quite disheartening.
There's been an almost 12% rise in applications since last year, but why? One answer is there are simply more young people. The population's been growing, and this year it's at an all-time high. School grades are improving, so the proportion of young people who are able to apply for university has increased. And more mature students are applying because the economic downturn means there are fewer jobs. Then add to that a reduction in university places. The coalition government has put a strict cap on student numbers, with barely any leeway for universities who over-recruit and expensive penalties for those who do. It's a toxic mix, which some in education have described as an almost perfect storm.
Universities are actually fined at the moment if they want to expand. They're not allowed to take on more undergraduates than they've received their allocation from the government. And the reason for that is that the current system of fees and financing means that it actually costs the government money just to support people paying their tuition fees. So we've got to get away from this system where actually good universities aren't allowed to expand, where more people want to go to university but they can't because there isn't the money there to support them.
The benefit of going to university is well documented. Statistics suggest graduates earn on average £100,000 more over their working life than those who haven't been to university. And there are now real concerns about exactly who will miss out this summer.
It's quite concerning because university is still probably the surest route to social mobility in terms of the opportunities it opens up. And I think that's particularly the case for disadvantaged young people, and particularly the case if they're lucky enough to get into a sort of leading university and all the job prospects and higher earnings that entails. So what we're worried about is in a sort of environment where you have a fixed number of places or even a reducing number of places, who are going to be the ones who lose out. And our hunch is that it could be those from poorer backgrounds who are already less likely to aspire to university.
100? No.
Let's have it, please.
Oh, come on, we can't be here all night. Should we come back to you after news night?
Feeling the heat, school leavers have been looking for alternatives. Home studying is experiencing a surge, with Open University seeing a 20% rise for the under-25s. Some apprenticeships have become wildly oversubscribed, with more young people applying for the BT training scheme than to Oxford University.
Students actually come under a phenomenal amount of pressure. 37% of students feel pressured into university by their teachers, and 28% by their parents, and 20% said that it was pretty much the only option that they were told about during careers guidance. So there is a phenomenal amount of pressure on young people to still go to university, which is probably why the dropout rate remains close to 1 in 4, with almost 25% of young people not completing their degree.
I do think we need to get away from this assumption that has been perpetuated by politicians that university is the only way to go. It is the right thing for a lot of people, but it's also not the right thing for a lot of people. And in some cases, you know, it's going to be better for people to do it later in life, or to go down some alternative route like doing a part-time degree or evening study, or not to do a degree at all, but to do some kind of vocational education, further education, or an apprenticeship. So I do think we need to get out of this mindset that university is right for everyone and that it's, you know, the only option that you can go to after school.
In the autumn, Lord Brown will publish his independent review of university funding in England. The government says it needs a radical overhaul and must be cheaper. The Labour government's goal was for 50% of young people to go to university. Many are now wondering what exactly this government is intending to do.
Sophie Hutchinson, well, I'm joined by the Minister for Universities, David Willits, the Director General of the Russell Group of Leading Universities, Dr. Wendy Pyatt, the President of the National Union of Students, Aaron Porter, and the entrepreneur, Simon Woodruff. First of all, David Willits, was the Labour government wrong to set a target for 50% to go to university?
I don't believe in those kind of artificial top-down targets. I think the number of people going to university should emerge as a result of the decisions of individuals with proper advice on what all the options are.
So you would never set a target of any percentage of school leavers to go to university?
I don't believe in those type of targets, no. I do understand that there's more and more people who want to go to university, and that's why this year there will be more places at university than ever before, which I think is quite an achievement in tough times. Aaron
Porter, more places. It turns out that there'll be 157,000 looking for clearing for 21,000 places. An awful lot of disappointed students.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, despite the fact that more people will be going to university, it's no consolation to those that are being left out. And what's going to be utterly shocking is there will be lots of people that have worked incredibly hard, believing that they'll get the opportunity to go to university, having the aspiration to go into employment afterwards, that will simply be denied that opportunity because of an artificial cap that has still been placed by government on the number of places that are prepared to fund.
And although more people are going to university, the number of places, despite what David Willett says, has actually been cut by 10,000 this year.
Well, I mean, there certainly are 10,000 less places than perhaps Labour were prepared to put forward, although there are question marks around that funding. I'm trying to focus in on the hundreds of thousands of people that will have the grades to go to university that will simply be denied that opportunity.
Wendy Pyatt, there are just simply too many students.
Well, I'm sympathetic to those students who are going to have to struggle this week to get into university. But we do have to remember that applying to university is a competitive process, and actually we're not like other countries where going to university is an entitlement and lots of young people just automatically go on to university. It's actually very expensive for the government to send lots of people to go to university.
But there's also, you would say, that people are set up with false hopes, because there's many students that got very good grades who were not back from universities this year, not even just with a single university of their choice, a number of universities of their choice. So it is not even available for the kids that make the grade.
I think the key issue here is what David has actually alluded to is proper information, advice and guidance. Those students should have an insurance offer, and it's working class students who don't have parents who've been to university who are most in need of that advice and guidance.
Simon, should people just not be getting het up about university?
Yeah, a bit. I mean, I didn't go to university, and most of the people I know who are really successful entrepreneurs didn't go to university.
So what was the problem with university?
Well, I think it's to do with the decisions you make in life when something goes wrong or something happens. And if you can turn it around, and actually the people I worry for is the parents, because, you know, when somebody's not getting into that university they had their eye on, it's the parents who are freaking out and getting scared. And actually, I say, you know, chill out a little bit. You know, actually, you can make the decision. You could look at it another way. Get into work 3 years before they come up to the day of reckoning 3 years later.
So do you think that the university can actually blunt that entrepreneurial edge?
Well, my daughter, who's at university, she said, Dad, I'm going to university to have the entrepreneur educated out of me. And I think you can get the imagination. You know, if you're not careful, we've got a system where you get these young kids with lots of imagination educated out of them.
Well, I'd be interested to find out where that is. I think what we should be looking at is the opportunities that not going to university does deny some people. We should remember in this debate that going to university does bring with it a graduate premium on average of over £100,000 to those that have been through university. And that's what I'm concerned about. I accept it's not for everyone, but those simply have worked hard, have the aspiration and the desire to be there, should absolutely be afforded that opportunity.
I saw an MBA...
Can I just bring in David Willits here, because we're having the conversation about the desire to go to university and the ability to go to university in academic terms, but what is also one of the biggest issues facing this government is the financing of universities. Now, at the moment, we have a situation where you, the incoming government, cut by an extra 200 million the money for universities on top of the 435 million that Peter Mandelson had cut before the election. Money is tight. How are you going to fund universities? Will it be possible that there will be a graduate tax?
Well, Lord Brown is looking at a range of options for how we can